So now we're going to go ahead and move forward a little bit, and we're going to bring on Zaheer Ali, who is one of the co-hosts of the Space Innovation Summit today and tomorrow. Z has worked with NASA. He works with USRA. I'll actually let him do a better job than me doing the Forrest Gump version of a little overview of himself. So if he would, I'll ask him to introduce himself a little bit. And then he's going to interview Dan Hart with Virgin Orbit, who was returning with us. He came and spoke with us last October, which was amazing. He was with Sir Richard Branson, and we would appreciate him and Sir Richard being together and talking a little bit about what they do. What they do is absolutely critical, not only to being able to communicate, but also for national defense. And I'll leave that to Z and to Dan to talk about that. But Z, welcome. If you would, please just give a high-level overview of yourselves, and then and then maybe introduce Dan, and we'll have you start that conversation.
Hey there. Thank you very much, David. My name is Zaheer Ali. Some of you know me from AF America's Future series of Space Talks with Z, our bi-weekly YouTube interview series. Thank you all again for being here. I'm going to have the pleasure of speaking with Dan Hart, but briefly just introduce myself. I am a physicist by training, and I work with the University Space Research Association out of their Silicon Valley office based at NASA Ames Research Center. Where we do a variety of research. We run the SOFIA program for NASA, which is the world's only airborne observatory, where we took a 747, cut a hole in it, and fly it at night to look at the stars. Also, we have the NASA Academic Mission Services program, which provides critical support in aeronautics, data science, and several other technical areas to the NASA Ames research teams. Joining us shortly is going to be Mr. Dan Hart of Virgin Orbit. Virgin Orbit is a remarkable company, a sister of Virgin Galactic under Sir Richard Branson's Virgin Group. Virgin Orbit specifically has taken the tack of doing what is called horizontal or off-wing launch, where they fly a 747, not that different from mine, SOFIA, at night up to altitude, and then launch off-wing rockets. Oh, there he is, the man himself. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I was just giving a quick, brief introduction to what Virgin Orbit is and does. The fact that you are the only successful horizontal launch so far in the world, particularly as of January 17th. Congratulations, sir, on putting stuff in space. That is just a spectacular achievement.
Thank you. It was a beautiful, beautiful day, and I mean it was fantastic to see the NASA satellites flying freely in their orbit, and maybe just as nice was to see a lot of tired faces with uncontrollable grins on their face. Just, it was a hard drive, as is any, when you bring a new system, especially a new technology into space, it takes a lot of work. There's unexpected sojourns and issues and whatnot, and I couldn't have been prouder of the Virgin Orbit team to plow through in the face of a pandemic, no less. We had to invent how we launch, how we operate, right, while we were working on inventing a new system. So anyway, it was a really terrific day for us and for all of our customers on January 17th.
So just to briefly introduce you, sir, welcome, Mr. Dan Hart, CEO of Virgin Orbit for the last 4 years. Before that, a long and illustrious career with the Boeing Company, finishing before joining Virgin as vice president, for government systems. And before that, a proud University of Albany graduate, if I recall correctly.
Absolutely.
I mentioned that, one, because it's a great school, and two, because I fenced on that campus when I was up and doing experiments at the Lab for Laser Energetics of University of Rochester.
Oh, terrific!
Yeah, so I know that stomping ground. I've had lake effect snow
That's part of why I came back to California.
I love it up there. But in February, I come back quickly.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. Although the spring there and the fall are truly spectacular.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful sky.
So thank you again for joining us. You know, Launcher One has opened up a new field for launch, and I'm really interested in jumping in, if you don't mind, right away into the discussion. And I think one thing that is really going to be of interest, and you're specially positioned to discuss, is what your thoughts would be on the space economy compared to last year or 5 years ago. I think it feels like a very exciting time, like a modern space race.
Yeah, it's really been remarkable, honestly. The combination of innovation and then feeding into ideas and capital in the commercial sector. The commercial sector really pushed forward first in the small satellite revolution that's going on, or rebalancing, whatever you want to call it. The governments now are putting both feet in as well, where you've got NASA really looking to exploit the use of small satellites for earth science, for instruments, even to the moon and interplanetary. You've got now the national security environment moving forward as well. And what's really interesting is the whole international space scene has changed quite a bit. And that, I think, is a function of a few things. The bar to be able to produce reliable satellites, 20, 25 years ago was very high.
Right.
And there were only a few outfits who could do it. Now you go to a conference like the Small Satellite Conference and walk down an aisle, you can pretty much assemble a satellite by the time you reach the end of the aisle. It's really incredible what's happened. And so if you have 10,000 square feet or so, you can start to assemble satellites. It just blows my mind that sophomores in college, will come up to you at these conferences with a satellite in their hand and say, "Can you launch this?
Wow.
We need a ride." It's a little, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe has a new whole scene happening. And so, the international scene, the regional scene in the United States, it's a whole different landscape, and it's a very nice virtuous cycle of ideas, inspiring capital, and bringing in new capabilities that's going to frankly change the way we live.
So you touch on a variety of things, and there's probably more than we can get into in just 30 minutes, but it's really, what you said is really exciting, because I know what you mean about the about sophomores. I've been mentoring a high school team that through bake sales and lawn mowing and washing cars and other things has managed to raise several thousands of dollars, significant parental and mentor donations as well, and they are positioned to put a small bird in orbit. And to me, I couldn't even believe it.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I remember it as a kid, firing an Estes rocket, and I
That's
thought
right.
that's the most amazing thing in the world. But we've got, kids with satellites in orbit. How exciting is that?
That's right. Yeah, no, yeah, saving lunch money to go get a couple, I think, what are those little engines called? The M80s with the, the long grain ones, and you'd stick them on stuff, and
I think they were D engines. Those were the big scary ones.
Yeah. And we, and you really had to run a bit hard after you lit that fuse to make sure you didn't end up with a lot of explaining to do.
We all learned flight safety.
That's right. That's right. We made our mistakes in the early years. So continuing on that theme of access, that's really what it seems amazing, is there's access because of the reliability not only of the launch platforms but of the systems around it, which you just described for us. And Virgin being the first commercial entity to do off-wing launch, I believe the first of any entity. Again, congratulations. How do you see that helping the launch sector evolve? Because you guys
Well,
are providing a new type of access.
yeah. So, it was the first time a liquid rocket came off the wing of an aircraft and traveled to orbit. And we left from an airport in Southern California with 10 packages, and about an hour later they were at 500 kilometers. The capabilities of the system are really tremendous, and what I love about what the team has done at Virgin Orbit is really bringing new capabilities. So, we flew out of an airport. We did not fly out of a government range. There was no, none of the claptrap around, beautiful places like Cape Canaveral and Vandenberg and other, I love those places, but we were disconnected from those.
Right.
So we're FAA regulated, gives us huge flexibility. We can fly to the right exact location that the rocket wants to go to for the right inclination or azimuth of flight. So that's a big deal in that we don't have to fly around land masses, and we're not locked to a specific latitude of the Earth. And then, the other aspect is we're mobile. I mean, we can provide launch very easily to to countries that don't have it. So, I mean,
Right.
for instance, we have a project that we're working for the UK Space Agency and Cornwall to
Right.
fly out of Cornwall next year. We will be flying out of Guam. We are working with a airport in Oita, Japan. Any place that there is a spare an airport, we can operate. And then there's the physics. I mean, our first stage is a 747. We get to 35,000 feet out of the thick atmosphere, and the better part of Mach 1
Right.
before the rocket has to do any work at all. So it's a nice marriage between aircraft operability, flexibility, and horsepower, and simple, producible, easy to operate rocket technology. And then the other thing I'll just mention that I'm really proud of the team and just how it has worked out. We envisioned a very operable system. We've gone to launch now twice, and both of those launches happened at the minute that we predicted days and days before. And so we're seeing the operability of the aircraft really take over the launch processing, which is really, really exciting. Now we're not socked in waiting for weather or, winds on the ground and things like that. We get up, we put our satellites in the fairing, and we go.
So just to pull that thread a little farther, that clearly that changes a lot of the culture around the launch marketplace, because the airborne platform has far less scrub days.
Well, I think it changed the expectations. Yeah, and it treats what our customers expect and what they deserve.
So as that moves forward, do you see not only government but commercial entities? How do you see the shakeout possibly developing between where the market will go with vertical launch versus horizontal launch versus tourism? I'm curious as to your thoughts.
Well, I mean, tourism is a whole other topic,
Right.
where and it's a whole other market, and it's very exciting what our sister company Virgin Galactic is doing, and the rollout of their new spaceship. There's huge excitement and thirst for people to experience space. So
Right.
putting that aside for a second, there are a lot of aspirational launch companies that have been experimenting with engines and trying to move forward. The chasm between aspiration and operation in launch is very wide. And so, I can say firsthand, you do get a few gray hairs moving across that chasm.
Yes.
And so, there's been a lot of a lot of vision, probably not as much execution as maybe has been talked about over the past few years, and a lot of people are still trying. And frankly, I respect anybody who takes propulsion to a launch site and sits through and learns to do a countdown and operates a system. But I mean, like any sort of new market, the way you differentiate will be key. And so I think there will be a number of launchers that do, cross that chasm. And then it will be about, who has differentiated capabilities. A lot of the rockets that we see being produced are frankly very similar to the Thor Delta or the Atlas, of the early 60s, with some new manufacturing techniques and, a few other aspects. And I think those will be beautiful birds, but, they'll compete with each other in the exact same landscape, and it'll be, there'll be a bit of a shakeout there. We're focused more on, how we can differentiate launch and really bring it to the next level by taking a different approach. And I mean, it's a classic Richard Branson type vision of, hey, isn't this possible? Why can't we? And I got an email this morning from Richard with some more of those. I mean, he is a constant force of, why can't we do this? And isn't the answer yes? And let's move out and get going. And so that's where we are. We've built a team. We've now produced and demonstrated, I guess, our first really big idea, and we have others behind that which we'll be bringing forward as well.
So that's, I mean, it's kind of, we talk about, particularly my training in counterterrorism and homeland security, we talk about asymmetry, asymmetric thinking, and orthogonal thinking. This is very literally orthogonal. Where others went vertical, you guys went horizontal.
Exactly. I mean, since the days that, a bunch of aircraft engineers came to Cape Canaveral and started to launch rockets, the question has always been, why is it so hard? Why can't we operate the way we do on aircraft? Why can't we bring that capability? There's been studies and studies and studies done. And of course, the great programs like X1 and X15. But, so we've married the 747, one of the most, operable workhorses ever.
I know personally with Sophia.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably climbed those stairs and taken a good look around. Well, those in our airplane, those stairs take you to a very small control room.
Right.
First class.
Right. Yeah. No. We'll have to have you take a look at Sophia. It's more. I think you've got a Porsche and we've got a Cadillac.
I would love. I would have. I've heard so much about Sophia, and our test pilot Kelly Latimer flew on Sophia, so we're connected via our pilots.
Yeah, and she was. What can you say about our pilots? I think we've got the best team in the world, but I may be a little biased. So what good on you guys for poaching one of the best. One of the things that you've alluded to, but I would like to ask you about it a little specifically, is culture, because there's a lot of discussion around what the culture needs to be in space, around the space ecosystem, in a space company. And much of it, of course, is very well informed by the successes of NASA and the Air Force. But again, moving into a commercial endeavor, balancing the commercial requirements and needs, and the needs of investors, et cetera, with the needs of customers, with the needs of the workforce, maintaining safety, maintaining those items. You guys have found a way to create that balance, which from the outside probably looks easy to many people, but I am certain, having worked in it, that it's anything but easy to create and maintain. Maybe you could provide us some wisdom on how you've done that.
Well, I mean, I think culturally, number one, there's got to be a culture that, you know, that wants to take bold moves and move forward and innovate. And I think that's at the core. You know, the people who come to Virgin Orbit do so because they want to create something new in space. I mean, that is really the driving force. And then you've got, you know, then there are aspects of culture. It's great to dream, but there are a whole set of disciplines associated that take dreams to execution. And I would say over the past 4 years or so, you know, a lot of our focus has been in that area of, okay, how do we maintain a solid drive towards taking bold moves and driving forward in a risk tolerant, you know, manner. I mean, we had issues. We had an issue on our second stage during firing. I mean, we leaned forward. We had to go to flight before we had finished some of the test series. We could have delayed the whole development to do that, but we made the decision. No, we're gonna you know, take the risk, mitigate it as much as we can, and move forward. So you've got to create innovation and velocity, and you got to continue to move forward. And then you need those disciplines. I mean, you know, repeating every mistake that's ever been made is not the way to get to space. And so, you know, our culture is a marriage between, you know, great ideas and concepts, and then the rigor and the attention to detail, the attention to safety, the attention to mission assurance that's needed to actually make it happen.
Well, thank you for that. I think there's a lot to learn. I imagine that business schools are going to be writing about the about what has led to January 17th for a while, and there's clearly so much more to come for Virgin Orbit. And on that note, one of the things that is very interesting is that you're going to be part of the groups that put so many more birds into orbit. And I was curious as to how your team looks at when looking at those launches, and particularly managing the fact that they've got to fit them into quite a bit of traffic that's developing up there. This is kind of one of those pink elephants in the room that everybody knows is there, but nobody's quite sure how to solve. Perhaps what are your instincts or ideas in regards to how you're already dealing with it and how Virgin is going to deal with these things in the future?
Well, I mean, there's a few different layers to this onion. You know, we see the traffic that's developing because we coordinate before each launch on any conjunctions, you know, basically traffic, and make sure that our launch does not interfere with anybody else. You know, to an extent, companies are on their own right now. We look at lifetime in orbit for our payloads for ourselves, and we mitigate, you know, to try to bring those down as soon as possible. And so I think more and more we need to work together to make that happen. But that's sort of companies taking it on their own to some degree, with some overall regulations that are in place to make that happen. And I think there's more work that needs to happen there to sort of standardize approaches and maybe even some products that help satellites and you know, upper stage rocket stages get back down safely. So I think there's an opportunity there probably for business. Government needs to really do a lot more in establishing space traffic management, and to where we really know a little better what's going on in space, and the coordination can happen more easily. I think there's been great work done in that at a, you know, probably not the largest budget that was ever created. So there's probably more funding that's needed there. There's more international collaboration. I mean, the ITU has, I think, been a success story for frequency coordination, you know, through the UN. There's now more needs to be done associated with, you know, satellites in orbit. And there's more rules of the road that need to be established. We're just at the beginning here. a lot of satellites can work together in orbit. It's a big place. We have the technology to do it, but it's going to take some funding and some ownership, not only in the United States, but across internationally, so that we are, it's kind of like the maritime world of 500 years ago. We need
Right.
to start really developing more and more rules of behavioral norms and forums in which to discuss how to conduct them.
So, thank you for that, because the role of governance is going to be key. What is also interesting is economically, what might you guess at as to what government is doing and perhaps needs to do, not necessarily in terms of incentivizing, but in terms of protecting commercial space. So more in the line of space security. Clearly, there's cybersecurity that's involved in how the satellites communicate and all that hardware. But physical security could become something we actually need.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we're seeing that develop, and it's a bit disappointing, honestly, but it's natural. Wherever people have gone, there's always been, room for aggression and mischief. And we're seeing, in the last decade or two, we've seen more and more experimentation with anti-satellite weaponry and that kind of thing, as well as satellites that drift over to other satellites, space, and satellites like their own space. And so there's going to need to be, and it really does follow, in my mind, the whole maritime development. There needs to be a way to enforce norms of behavior. And I think, you're seeing that with, in the US, the Space Force being established and allied countries around the world following suit and starting to think about capabilities. I really hope that things like kinetic weapons in space are never, ever seen again. They're such an environmental disaster for, frankly, all of humanity. But I do think, there needs to be people watching and thinking and have capabilities to make sure space is always there, just like the sea lanes are always open. Our economy requires it. Our banks, whoever thought our banks would be connected, through timing signals from space. It's vitally important. And of course, our national security, our military and intelligence services heavily rely on the infrastructure in space.
That's remarkable. And thank you for a very direct answer on that. We do have folks from that side of the house, as it were, who are going to be speaking later, in particular, folks from the Space Force, and it'll be very interesting to hear their perspective as well. I know we're running a little close to time now, and thank you again so much for taking the time to speak with us. I wanted to close with just asking you, what are you excited about right now? What most excites you with what's going on? You just had a spectacular launch, demonstrated to the world that this does work, and opened up a new channel to space. So what's next?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I haven't gotten over the high from January 17th. But I'm most excited about our next launch, which will have a DoD satellite on it, a satellite from the Royal Netherlands Air Force, and a satellite from a company from Poland, SatRev. So we are really excited about our next flight, and in launch, that's where you always are. But more broadly, to your point, this revolution that's going on in space, this rebalancing and sort of push forward in technology is going to change the way we live. It will be married with terrestrial capabilities and technologies being developed on the ground, just like, you know, GPS works with your smartphone. But it will change the way we live. We will become a less polluting species because we'll know better where the pollution's coming from. We will see the world differently through you know, radar from space and hyperspectral from space. We will communicate more broadly, if you can imagine it, where, you know, IoT and tracking of what's going on, whether it's your car or airplane or package. There are applications of processing in space, encryption from space. Space will serve us, and it's really exciting just to think, as you see the ideas developing and these companies forming around them, it's incredibly exciting to see and imagine what 10, 20 years is going to be like as these capabilities are developed in space and serve humankind.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for your comments. Folks, Dan Hart of Virgin Orbit, the first commercial space company to do off-wing launch and put satellites in space. January 17th, they opened up a new era in the access to space. Thank you once again, sir. I keep telling my little girl, she's 4, that, you know, Papa may not make it to Mars, but I expect you to bring me home a Mars rock.
There you go. Well, great to be with you this morning.
Hello, Dan. Hi, Dan. This is Dave Hamilton. Can you hear me okay, sir?
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you to both you and Z, and I wanted you to say hello to Scott Murray. We're here with Scott Murray from Murray Media. Scott Murray, of course, was the one that helped connect you and us and Sir Richard last time. So I'd love for you to say hello to Scott Murray, Murray Media.
Scott, great to see you.
It's great.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
It's great. No, it's great to see you. And listening to your conversation with Z, that was great stuff. Gosh, as I sat here, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I remember when they first talked about back in the 60s, for Pete's sake, President Kennedy, you know, we're going to get a man to the moon by 1969. And I'm just a short, small little kid. And I'm going, you're going to send a what to where? To the moon? And now hear what you're doing, for Pete's sake. I'm old enough to remember that launch in July of '69. And here you are doing what you're doing. So congratulations, Dan. That's just absolutely awesome. Awesome. And please say to hello to Sir Richard. What you guys continue to do is just above and beyond. So I salute you both.
Thank you. I definitely will do. And you guys, and have a great day and a great rest of the conference. We'll keep plugging.
Thanks so much. Yep. Be safe and continued success. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you so much, sir.